About the games you used to play
Yeah.
in the streets. And look over here, though.
Okay.
That's good.
Already go?
Yeah.
Okay, what what was it like for a young kid to grow up in a city like I did? We were limited. In the wintertime, there were no ice skating rinks. I don't even recall if I had a sled. We did have a type of an ice skate that we used to clamp onto our shoe. And if the streets got frozen, we'd skate on the streets. But that was that was the extent of our ice skating.
How often did you skate on the street?
Pardon?
How often did you skate on the street?
How often do we stay? I think that, strange enough, streets were our life. In the summertime, spring and summer, from the time I got up, 7 o'clock in the morning, till my mother would call me in, we'd be playing on the streets doing something. I know many times I'd come home and I haven't eaten anything all day. In those days, we didn't have shoes like the Reeboks and Nike Airs and all that. We had that old-fashioned Keds, just a really sort of a rubber sole, and that was basically our athletic shoe. The one thing that I can tell is baseball was my life. From the time I first remember learning how to catch with some of the kids, because my dad didn't teach me how to play, baseball was everything I lived for. I had an old beat-up glove that I would patch up a number of times. I'd take it to bed with me and pound into it. The balls we used weren't these beautiful Major League baseballs you have now. We'd make our own ball. We'd take a bunch of old stiff clothes and wrap them up with the black friction tape. And that was our baseball. And that's all I liked to do, was play catch, play ball. I would read about it in the papers, listen to it on the radio. It seemed like nothing. I'd take the ball and toss it up in the air and learn how to catch by myself. But that was the thing I loved more than anything. And the great ball players that I'd hear on the radio, Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, and Charlie Gehringer. The few times that we were able to go to the Tiger Navin Field, they didn't call it Tiger Stadium, they called it Navin Field. We got there by getting free tickets from the police. They had what they call a police athletic league. And every year the policemen would go around and give the kids around the streets a ticket to the ball game to teach them how to be good kids. But that was basically the sport that I did and best remember. And all my life, even to this date, I still remember those beautiful days when I would do nothing but play ball. And we played in the streets. We'd wait till the cars went by, or we'd play in the alleys. But that was our ball diamond, the concrete streets of Hamtramck. Oh, there were a lot of other kid games we played. I think I might have mentioned it earlier. We would take a couple milk cans, pet milk cans. We'd stack one on top of the other, and then we'd pace off about 20 yards, and then we'd take another pet milk can and throw it to see who had the best arm to knock it off. And we'd keep score. The reason we used pet milk cans is because you would puncture it. All the other cans would be always open, so the pet milk cans always fit nice in our hands. But the real story of life in those days is, I grew up in Hamtramck from about 1924 to 1934. And in 1929, October was the great stock market crash. Something that, of course, a little kid like me didn't understand. But what I understood about it was that I knew suddenly my dad wasn't working, and we had to rely on handouts from my cousins who were better well-to-do than we were, because my uncle worked in the A&P bakery and baking pies and cakes, so they were able to give us a little help now and then. So for a few years, my dad scrounged around trying to pick up a job here and there. Mom got a job working in a bank in downtown Detroit. She'd had my dad would take her down in the morning, and she'd work all night, and she was a janitress, cleaning buildings and floors. I don't know for how much. She did that for about 4 or 5 years. And then she'd take a streetcar back, and in the meantime, my dad finally got called back to work. I work a couple of times a week. He was making 25 cents an hour, which is pretty good wages at that time. For food, we, many times during the week, we barely had food to eat. I remember walking through the alleys of Hamtramck looking for pop bottles, which at that time, if you could find one, you could trade it in for a penny. So a few pennies at that time went a long way. 9 cents for a loaf of bread. And it was hard. But somehow it's amazing that I don't recall real hardship, although I remember when I would go downtown Hamtramck, they had a place called Dodge, Maine. It was blocks and blocks long, and that's where they made the old Dodge motors, the Chrysler cars. And people would be lined up for blocks and blocks waiting to be called in for work. Word got around that maybe they would be hiring, so suddenly overnight you'd have about 5,000 people lined up trying to get that 1 or 2 jobs they had open. I remember people selling apples on street corners, because in that year Michigan had a tremendous crop of apples. So the federal government doled them out to various charity organizations and the people, and they would be selling them for 5 cents an apple. Every street corner had somebody selling apples, and that's the way they try to make a living. But through all of that, 2 things that always I remember: I loved school. I couldn't wait for school to start. I hated school when it ended. And I don't think I missed a day of school in all the years that I lived in Hamtramck, because we were quite healthy, and I like just the challenge of school. In fact, all my life I've always enjoyed school and education. But the 2 fundamental things were that as a city boy, a little kid in a big city, I didn't know very much what was going outside of that area. Now as I go back to Hamtramck, I see old buildings that used to be banks. In 1929, Hamtramck people were spending money like mad. Every street corner had a new bank. And overnight, every one of those banks bankrupted, and today when you go back, those banks are still standing. They're either a furniture store or some kind of a utility store, but there's evidence and traces of Hamtramck and the old Depression, what they call the Depression days. Towards the end of 1933, my dad was transferred to Battle Creek, Michigan. The factory he was working in was bought out by another company, very much what is happening today by companies buying out another company. And so he and about 20 other workers decided they would stay with the company and go to Battle Creek. And so they were driving a really old-fashioned Model A cars, 4, 5, 6 guys to a car, and go down on a Sunday and then come back on a Saturday. So for about 1.5 years, I didn't see my dad except on weekends. I know I anticipated him coming back because he'd always bring me something. I remember one thing that he brought me back. I was so excited I got it. He bought me a yo-yo. And one time he came back and brought me a nice pair of new mittens made out of wool or something. It was so exciting. So even in those days, like they do today, parents would go away and they bring the kids some gifts. So he always brought something. And my mom continued working down no, she didn't work in the banks. She started taking care of us, waiting for my dad to make a decision whether he'd stay in Battle Creek. So finally, he found a home on 90 Avenue B in Battle Creek. And in 1934, after I finished grade school in St. Ladislaus, my brother Joe still had about 3 more years to go in the elementary school. My brother Chet already had graduated from Hamtramck High School, and he already had joined my dad in Battle Creek. and he started to work in the factory at age 17. That's where he got his first job to help out. So the day came when we left Hamtramck. And this pretty much brings a kind of a, not a complete end to the story, but my mother never in all the years we lived in Battle Creek ever adjusted to live in Battle Creek. She pined and was so lonely because all of her friends, all of her life, all the Polish people and going down the streets of the bakeries and the Polish meat markets, she missed it. Because Battle Creek had an ethnic community, they called it Hunky Town, and had Lithuanians, Romanians, some Polish, Czechoslovakian, but basically it was not anything equivalent to Hamtramck. There were some Polish families there, but not many. And for many years afterwards, she would want my dad to go back to visit my relatives, to visit my cousins, and to visit her brother. But basically, I left Hamtramck behind, and even though I went back quite a few times, Battle Creek then became my home, from which I went through high school and eventually into the Navy, and that's about the story of where Hamtramck plays a part in my early years.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah. Yeah, my mother was, never got over it, Joe, Chris. Yeah, she was, in the later years they had some Polish people move in, but it was hard on her. And I guess it's hard on a lot of people that move and leave behind their heritage or something like that.
No, she had already moved once. So, moved from...
Well, when she moved from New York to Chicago and then to Hamtramck, a lot of those people followed and ended up in Hamtramck. But she was closer to her brother, and but it's because she could talk Polish in Battle Creek. She had to learn English, and it was hard on her. I never regretted leaving Hamtramck. It's once I get into the public schools over there and went right on through. But if you ask me today, is Battle Creek my hometown? I don't look at it as my hometown. I don't even look at Chicago as my hometown because I was only a little kid. Is Hamtramck my hometown? No, I wouldn't call that my hometown. Battle Creek probably is the closest to what I would say is where I would hang my hat up. But then remember, I was only there from 1934 to 41 when I had to leave. And I didn't get back then for about 4 years when I was overseas. And then from there, when I went back again and came, I went to Michigan State for 3 years. So for quite a few years, Battle Creek was not really a place that I stayed around very long.
You can keep talking. I'm just going to...
Yeah.
Different camera angle.
The strange thing about moving is that you kind of lose, for a younger person, you kind of lose your roots. And you can't really, although I go back to Battle Creek, many of the guys are already gone, and so there's not much to go back to except to see my parents and the gravesite where they're buried right now. Yep. Okay, Chris, that's about it.
Okay.
Yep.
That sounds good.
Yep.